Well, good afternoon, and a very warm welcome from the Association of Colleges of the Sisters of St. Joseph. The Association of Sisters of St. Joseph of Colleges of the Sisters of St. Joseph is a consortium of 9 colleges and universities founded by the Sisters of St. Joseph. I'm Martha Malinsky, the Executive Director, and I'm so pleased that you were able to join us today for our workshop, What's New and Different for Faculty Post-Pandemic? How are AI tools like ChatGPT 3 altering teaching, learning, and research? This is the last of our series of 4 workshops that we've been able to offer this spring. Just a few reminders. This and all the workshops in the series have been recorded, and this workshop will be recorded and will be available on our website. The workshop is also being offered in a meeting format to allow interaction among colleagues. So be sure that you stay on mute, and we invite you to be interactive in this session. And so feel free to utilize the chat, and we'll have a Q&A session after the panelists speak. With that, I'm going to turn it over and introduce you to Chris Dougherty from Chestnut Hill College.
Thanks, Martha. Good afternoon, everybody. Today's event constitutes the last of 4 faculty development sessions sponsored by the Chief Academic Officers at the 9 ACSSJ institutions in collaboration with Martha Malinsky, Executive Director of ACSSJ. In conjunction with a survey of faculty at each of the ACSSJ colleges and universities, we hope this series has provided evidence-based approaches to inform our institutions about faculty experiences and the strategies they can use or are using in adapting their work to the changing needs of learners post-pandemic. Today's session provides a more forward-looking perspective on trends in teaching and learning, particularly those informed by developments in artificial intelligence that have been widely discussed and debated in recent months. Today, our panelists will introduce us to some of the newest developments in AI that are impacting faculty perceptions and practice, followed by a consideration of the benefits of these tools and working with students, along with some important cautions related to detection and prevention in cases where AI conflicts with expectations for academic integrity. Our panelists today are Beryl Hoffman, co-chair of the Science Division and professor of computer science at ELMS College, Ian McDonald, dean of the School of Math and Science and interim dean of business and professor of computer science at the College of St. Rose, Lynn McGoey, Associate Dean for Student Success at St. Joseph's University, and Amy Poland, Associate Dean and Director of Online Learning, also from St. Joseph's University. Our panelists will be presenting for a total of approximately 40 to 45 minutes, followed by Q&A and comments from attendees. We will monitor your questions and comments in the chat function, and so please share them as they occur to you during the presentation. We can't guarantee that we will be able to address each comment or question, given that we are committed to this event lasting 1 hour as promised, but we'll do our best to be sure that we cover as much information as possible for all present. And so we'll begin today's conversation with Ian McDonald. Thanks everyone for being here this afternoon.
Thank you very much, and it's my pleasure to be here. I was excited to be invited. So I'm going to start with just a basic overview of AI and set this up for my colleague, Dr. Hoffman, who is going to demo ChatGPT, show you a little bit about what it's capable of, let's get started. So it's not easy to explain all this in a short period of time, so I brought my little Celsius here to speed me up. And when you tell a professor he's got or she's got 5 minutes to explain AI, they got to hit the gas pedal. So good thing this is being recorded. We can slow it down. But feel free to ask me questions in the chat, and like my colleague said, we will try to get to those as quick as possible. So just want to start with, what is artificial intelligence? And there's a lot of folks that walk around a little scared of this and or excited about it, and we don't always know exactly what it is. But as we know, intelligence is very important to us as humans. In the field of AI, attempts to build intelligent entities. Ben Copen describes AI as the study of systems that act in a way so that any observer, they would appear to be intelligent. So a computer may appear to behave intelligently. It doesn't mean it's actually intelligent in the same way that a human is, which is sort of where the word artificial comes into play. An AI is an intelligent entity. It can be defined with 4 dimensions. Think like a human. Imagine machines with minds that can make decisions and process. Act like a human. Can a machine do things that at the moment people do better? Think rationally. Develop computational methods that model perception, reasoning, and that can take action. Laws of thought, logic. And lastly, to act rationally. Can a machine or an intelligent agent be built so it acts just to achieve the best outcome or the best expected outcome? And artificial intelligence goes back quite a bit, even though the phrase wasn't really coined until the 50s. It has roots in philosophy, mathematics, economics, neuroscience, psychology, computer engineering, linguistics, and many more. AI was born in the 50s, actually 1956. The term was coined by John McCarthy, who was using some techniques for automated theorem proving. And I can certainly, I can't get by without giving some credit to Alan Turing, who invented the Turing test for determining whether someone was talking to a computer or a human behind a curtain. Very interesting studies, and I certainly would refer anyone to those readings. AI went through decades of hype, over-optimistic expectations, the 50s, 60s. In the 70s, sort of a reality check, limitations were realized. We saw the limitations of computer power, but still there was work being done. There were methods being developed. We saw knowledge-based systems developed where problems can be solved in some limited scope with specific domain knowledge. And really most of the AI algorithms that we're seeing today were developed and advanced prior to the 90s, but they had to wait for technology to advance. So you fast forward to today, several trends have come together. We have availability of large data sets. Why? Because it's much easier to rapidly collect clean data and store data. I remember going back to the 80s, I was so excited to get my hard drive that was, a whopping 3 or 4 megabytes. And now we have several terabyte drives. Computational power, speed, storage, interconnection, robotics and embedded systems. All of these have advanced and come together to bring us to where we are with AI. Certainly with the internet and networking and distributed computing, and there's all sorts of technologies that have helped bring us to where we are. So I want to talk a little bit about ChatGPT, some of the AI behind ChatGPT, and I'm talking about this at a very, very, very high level. We don't have the time to get into all of it in detail. And certainly it's well beyond the scope of where we want to go with today's discussion, but I think it frames it pretty well. So again, not the nitty gritty, but ChatGPT is an evolution from prior versions of OpenAI's large language models like GPT-3 to GPT 3.5. GPT-3 was a generated text based on a wealth of data that was available on the internet, but not always able to produce desirable results to humans. It would put things together, but we say, it's not really relevant, or it's like, what is this? Kind of looks a little random. And what technology goes into this sudden, ChatGPT system where we're getting cover letters and resumes and term papers and little scripts and things that are written for us? Well, nothing really all that new, but there's a neat combination of things that have been put together, and it's supervised learning and it's reinforcement learning in AI with human feedback, and it looks at the statistical structures of languages, and there's human intervention so that along the way error can be minimized, false information can be weeded out, bias can be reduced. It just really adds the fine tuning to what has already existed long ago. I mean, systems like ChatGPT have been around for a very long time in smaller forms and not as good. So I just want to put that out there that we're evolving to this point. And lastly, before I turn it over to my colleague, should we be scared of AI? No. Should we be scared about ChatGPT? No. Do we need to be aware of what ChatGPT is capable of? Yes. We've seen this before. I remember when students first started bringing computers into the classroom. It was a whole change back in the early 2000s. Not hardly anyone had laptops, and everyone had a laptop. So we were worried about what are they doing on the computers in class? What do they have access to now? They didn't when they couldn't bring a computer. Cell phones, we had to make an adjustment. So here we are again, we have to make some adjustments. So don't be afraid of ChatGPT. It can be used for a lot of really great things. It could be a time saver. It can help with business. It can help with research. So with all that being said, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Beryl.
Thank you for that great AI introduction. So how many of you have tried ChatGPT? If you have your video on, raise your hand. Oh, all right, some, all right. Okay, well, hopefully today you will, if you haven't, or if you'll at least see a demo of it. So I'm going to share the link to ChatGPT, chat.openai.com. And then when I share my screen, you'll see a demo of it as well. So let's see. Let's do this. There we go. So I'm already logged in, but if you're not logged in, you'll probably see something like this, where you can sign up. In order to sign up, you do need a phone. They will text you a verification code just to make sure you're a real human and you're just making one account. It is free, or you can log in. It is free, although they do have a plus version where you can pay $20 a month and you get some extra stuff. So ChatGPT was released by OpenAI in December, and it made a huge fuss. One of the biggest, largest language model release. GPT stands for generative pre-trained transformer model. So it's pre-trained already on all the data on the web, not all, but a lot of it. So it's actually pretty incredible the way it works. But it's not the only one out there. There's an AI race going on. So even though it's perhaps the most well-known one, every tech company is coming up with their own models, in every country as well. So these are going to be popping up everywhere, and it will creep into every technology that you use currently on your phone, in Microsoft Office, all of those. OpenAI is now actually mostly owned by Microsoft, even though they started as a nonprofit company. Now it's a capped profit company. So when you come into ChatGPT, it's a very simple interface where you can just type in something, a question or something you want the AI to do. There are some examples here. It talks about its capabilities a little bit and its limitations. So one of the big limitations of ChatGPT is that it was generated in 2021. So it's not connected to the internet, and it doesn't know anything after that point. But Bing, Microsoft has put a version of GPT into Bing, which I think is now freely released, that is connected to the internet and is trained for after 2021. And Google Bard is also being released right now. So it will show up in search engines. So you just type something in here. So for example, you could type in, explain how generative AI works. I can't spell it. It's good to say, in a paragraph, because it tends to go on for a couple paragraphs in simple terms. You can give a language level, like for a first grader, for a high school student, something like that. And then it starts generating a response to you. And if you read it, it reads pretty well. I mean, it's pretty good writing, often better than perhaps our students could produce. I want to also show you behind the scenes, there's a playground for developers where you can also ask some questions and you can turn on what's the predictions it's doing. So going back to what Ian said, what is it doing underneath? It's not all that scary. It's the same thing that autocomplete on your phone does, or, predicting the next word on anything you type in these days. So for example, intelligence follows artificial with, 99% of the time in all the data that it fed it. After the word artificial, it needs to generate intelligence. But maybe it could generate technology. But if we look at, some word like focuses, so here, instead of focuses, it could have chosen perhaps, uses or creates and so on. And so if things are evenly split between some of these, sometimes, it puts in some randomness and it will try to generate something, uses instead of focuses and so on. Okay. So this is kind of neat to be able to see what's going on in the background for students. So coming back to ChatGPT, so one use is just asking questions, and it's like an encyclopedia. It knows a lot of things, whatever is on the internet, whatever is on Wikipedia, for example, that it was trained on. And it can adjust the language level, which is really nice as well. But it can, so that's one good use, just as an encyclopedia or even a customized tutor where a student can just keep asking questions on whatever they don't understand. And it knows a lot of things. It could be in biology, math, computer science, whatever you ask it, it will usually know, unless it's a very niche, small area. But it can also translate things and it will remember what you just said. So you can say, translate that to Spanish, and it'll take, what it just generated and then generate it to Spanish, and it knows any language that is commonly used on the web. So a lot of, smaller languages as well. My Spanish isn't that great, but I know Turkish. I had it translated to Turkish and it did a really good job, better than I could have done. So I assume that the Spanish is also pretty good. So this is another good use for your ELL students, students who perhaps know another language, are more comfortable in another language, being able to translate different information you give them or translate their words back into English. Very useful. And this could be a great equalizer for people around the world because English is used a lot and, non-English speakers have a hard time. So another good use is idea generation. And I use this all the time. So if I have an idea for an assignment, I'll come on ChatGPT, and I'll say, generate some ideas for me. Let's say it's for a writing assignment. For a writing assignment using ChatGPT, usually it'll be, some kind of computer science assignment for you, and it will happily generate lots of ideas for you. So write an essay exploring the ethical implications of AI technologies. Go back in time, write a creative story, write a persuasive essay, and so on. Keep going. So it generated 10 ideas for me. And then I can expand on one of the ideas, all right, I like this, idea number 5, tell me, come up with something else about it. And this can be really useful. So idea generation, I think, is great. Okay. Another good use is just editing or summarizing or fixing things. So sometimes I get stuck writing something, and I have an idea in mind. I'll just say fix or rewrite. Something like AI could be useful. I'm going to just make a lot of grammar errors. Education or something like that. Is it going to understand that? I don't know. So I can say fix and come down here. So it took that, it came up with AI could be useful in education, and I could say rewrite and expand that into 3 sentences or something like that. I can't type today. And it will, artificial intelligence has the potential to revolutionize the field of education and so on by providing personalized and adaptive learning experiences for students. And I really do believe that this customized learning with ChatGPT, I think, is really useful for our students to be able to ask as many questions as they want. And it's available, 24 hours a day. So a lot of this technology, especially the editing, summarization, is going to be and is already being added to Microsoft Office, Word, Excel. I just heard Microsoft Teams is going to start summarizing meetings and creating timelines and things for you, as well as internet searches. So other things I do in my classes is I do let students use ChatGPT. So in my last assignment, for example, I wanted students to build a Discord bot using Python, and I asked them to just go to ChatGPT and ask it. I'm trying to get to the top here. Ask it what to do, and it actually is such a complex problem. Is that they had to keep going back and asking more things. There's the whole setup and the API and so on. So it took a lot of back and forth. And I felt like they learned a lot, because even though it gives them some of the code, they still need to change that code. And some of the code doesn't work because, it's changed in 2020, since 2021 and so on. So I think it was a really good experience for them, that the type of experience that they're going to have when they're out in the workforce, and they're going to start using tools like this to help them do their job. So let me stop sharing. So as you can tell, that I'm very excited for the future. I feel like these AI tools will help us to be more productive. And also I feel like it will level the field for someone who perhaps doesn't know English that well or doesn't know coding that well. They will have an AI assistant to help them to accomplish whatever they dream of accomplishing. All right, so now I'm going to pass it on to Amy.
Hello, Lynn and I are going to talk about the inappropriate use by students of AI and what you can do as a faculty member, not only to address it, but also to prevent it. So I'm going to start off by saying one of the decisions we made when we started talking about this is to always talk about this in terms of academic integrity. Use your academic integrity pledge in your classroom. Make sure your students understand not only your expectations, but the expectations of the university, and what academic integrity is on your campus. This works really well, not only for AI, but for any form of cheating, plagiarism, or academic dishonesty. It is, like the research shows, it is one of the easiest ways to prevent the use of any form of academic dishonesty. So that's kind of how we have been asking faculty to have that conversation with students, is in terms of academic integrity. And so it's not that, again, it's not that AI is bad. It's that using it in an inappropriate way, or in a way that you don't have permission to use it, that is problematic. So I'm going to hand it off to Lynn.
To jump in there, based on what Amy had just said, my role at the university here and as the Associate Dean for Student Success is the positive side of the honor students and that type of thing, but also working one-on-one with the ones that violate our honesty policy using potentially AI. So one of the things we discovered really starting in December and January is we had a handful of students that were using it and knowing they were being deceptive, that were breaking our integrity statement. They were trying to slide it under the rug as typical plagiarism, passing off work that they know was not theirs. We also had a subset of students that truly didn't understand what plagiarism means because they put citations in it. So they had the AI generate it. One thing that Beryl didn't show is that you could ask it to write a paper on the stages of sleep and then citing, and then put the textbook that you use in class. And it would be paraphrased, it would be cited, it would fly through, turn it in. So we had a small subset of students that truly just did not understand that just because something has citations doesn't mean it's your own work. So when we were talking about integrity, that was something that we started working with our faculty to remind students in general what our integrity statement is, but also how we define plagiarism as a university. So they understand that it's not just citing properly, but also not passing off work that isn't yours, which led to a larger discussion we started having across our university has 2 campuses. What is going to be acceptable for AI use and what is not? So as Amy alluded to, making those expectations clear from the start. Do you allow it, and in what ways, and how can it be useful learning tool? I'll get to a few of those suggestions in a second, versus is it not acceptable at all, and put that into your course outline, your learning management system, so students are not confused from the start whether it's acceptable or not. I know all of our colleges and universities vary. Our statement on plagiarism in the student handbook outright says inappropriate use of technology. So this is kind of built in without having to say it directly. So everyone varies on that. Amy, I don't know if you want to jump in before I go into some of the specifics in the classroom.
Nope, I was just going into, I think, the prevention and detection now, right?
Sorry, taking a sip of water there.
Okay.
So one of the things that is available, people are using it or not, is Turnitin recently came out on April 4th. Correct me if I'm wrong on that date. Is it April?
You know what? I am going to stop you for a second. Let's.
I knew you had something you were going to go into
Well,
first.
that's okay. So, I just want to talk about prevention before detection. So some of the things you can do before you suspect somebody has used AI inappropriately. So some of the things you can do, the first one is scaffolding your assignment. So rather than having one large assignment at the end of the semester, breaking that down into smaller pieces so that two things. Number one, they're worth fewer points. So there's not so much pressure on one major assignment. But number two, you have all of these examples of what they've done throughout the semester. And so you can tell over the course of the semester whether that work at the end of the semester is actually theirs or not. The next two, and so Lynn, I'll take this and I'll hand it over to you for detection when I'm done with these, is about communicating those guidelines. So you can co-create those guidelines with students. Again, I don't think Lynn or I, either one, we're kind of in the position where we have to take the line that, you know, students are sometimes using it inappropriately, but I don't think either one of us believes that AI is the problem. It's the inappropriate use. And so one of the ways that really works well is to create guidelines with your students. What's okay to do, what's not okay to do, how can you use AI to help you without using it to cheat. So there's that. And then the other half of that is setting up a discussion board in your learning management system where you have questions and answers. This technology is just as new to the students as it is to us as faculty members. And so if there are questions about what's okay and what's not okay, they can go to that discussion board and they can ask you, and then you can address that to the entire class that yes, this is okay, or no, it's not. And so then
I'm going to jump right in on that. Building off of what Amy had said, was one of the examples I had used in my own course, was I asked them to complete the assignment using AI and critique it to see, one, are the citations coming out accurate, and is the information accurate? And to be able to compare that to their own assignment, where they had AI generate one and they had to write their own to look and see what was factual, what was correct, what were they missing, what was AI missing, to start that discussion in the classroom. And then as a class in groups, build one kind of assignment based on their own assignment and the AI. So I don't want to say quite embracing the bot, but looking at what they're missing versus what could have been incorrect or infactual, because as we noticed here, it started in 2021. So anything more recent, it would have been missing from the bot. So looking at kind of a modern article or research article that came out, how to add that into the AI. So expanding their knowledge rather than just trying to pass off knowledge that wasn't theirs. And that got a very good discussion going on in the classroom with the students of seeing the limitations of their writing, the limitations of the AI use, and what was the good, the bad, the ugly of both. So they could see where they could use it effectively versus what was not acceptable to pass off as their own.
yeah, and so then a couple of kind of low tech suggestions for how to address AI, and again, academic integrity in general. Flip the classroom. So if there's stuff that you want them to do that you're concerned about them using AI with, have them do it in class. do lectures outside the class. So if you have like a hybrid class, do lectures outside of the class and have them work on, whatever that project is for the end of the semester in class. One of my favorites is the pop quiz. So they turn in an assignment, a written assignment, and they can turn it in through Canvas, turn it in however, have them then write for 5 minutes about their assignment, like about the paper, about what they learned, about the main point. Like, it doesn't really matter what you ask them. What you're looking for is two things: what their writing is like, and number two, how much they actually know about their paper. This isn't only going to catch AI, it's going to catch the people that bought their paper, whether that's from an enterprising student, locally, or from a paper mill on online. It's going to catch, all kinds of other situations as well. But those are really easy ways to detect. And then I'm going to hand it back off to Lynn to talk about the detection tools, because she's had way more experience with that than I.
Kind of came with the chair up here. So that's where I guess dealing with the detection end of it, from using the resources, I'll talk about some of the technology out there, but more from the inside of the classroom or talking with students. Amy alluded to one, just asking them questions about their own paper. I put 3 papers in front of a student and asked if they could point to which one was the one they submitted. One did not know. So some of those are the more obvious, clear deception and lack of integrity that's going on. That speaks for itself. But using the detection tools more as a prevention tool. Turnitin did just release on April 4th a test run that's free for now, that if a paper goes through Turnitin.com, it does generate an AI score. So anywhere from 0% to, we see, up to 100%, and it will highlight in the paper, similar to Turnitin would find if a student used sources from the internet or elsewhere. It will highlight within the paper what was most likely generated by AI. So it does come with a warning about its new technology and how we should, further question the student and get more information from them. But it has been a good starting point that if they are using Turnitin.com. However, anything that goes through the discussion board and things like that would not flag in a learning management system if it doesn't go through Turnitin. So some of our faculty members that have had concerns, you could still do a Turnitin.com quick submit that's already built in with your learning management system, copy and paste the discussion board in, and that will kind of give you the same answer there. And then there's also the free detection tools, the Chat GPT detector that's free online. You can copy and paste in a student's paper or their discussion board or any other item that they submitted to your class, and it will give you a percentage score. So what I typically do is I don't just automatically tell them that they are in a lot of trouble and this is a guaranteed, but it opens the discussion. And I want to say that I have a pretty much about 100% confession rate so far. There's a few that may, Mike McGee is laughing right there. There's a few that are challenging it a little bit. And that's where I bring in the other conversation of, well, what did you write in your paper? What was the assignment? What was the title of the assignment? And so faculty members that are having students build their assignments from previous weeks or have a reflection component, AI does not reflect nor give opinion. So there's some students that will turn in a paper that outright just says, as an AI model, I cannot give an opinion. That shows me right there you used AI. But building in that kind of critical thinking and synthesis component with other assignments and opinions and linking things together that you're doing in class discussion, AI is not there in class, so they wouldn't know how to link it back to a very specific conversation in the classroom. So those are kind of the more, I guess you could say, surface level, getting your feet wet with detection of AI, with this sensitive nature, not wanting to, accuse a student. Because it's hard, because it's often very well written, and it can be very hard to detect, is this a student you've never had before that really is a great writer versus somebody that just is doing above and beyond what the rest of the class is submitting at that level of work. So kind of the beginning of the conversation. Amy, did you want to add on any more of the other faculty resources?
Well, I was just going to say the other one is simply reading, and not only will it say, I can't generate an opinion, it also, there's a thing at the bottom that says, this was generated by AI or generated by whatever. And sometimes they forget to leave that out, like take that out before they submit the paper. And it's not just students. There's a dean at one of the schools in Virginia who left it in an email that went out to all the students on campus after the Michigan shooting, and it said at the bottom that the message had been generated by, I don't know if it was ChatGPT, I mean, I assume, but and they left that in and then had to send out an apology. So sometimes it's just simple things like that that can catch students as well. And that's all I have.
That's what I just wanted to say. I think having the discussion with the students and setting the expectations of what is or is not acceptable is starting to let students be more aware of, one, what your integrity policy is, what your plagiarism policy is, but also how can they learn from what they do submit in the classroom if they did use AI, if you can use it in a positive way, how to do that. If you don't want it to be used at all, putting that out there, they're aware that we know what it is now. So it's not a secret that they know that we don't know anymore. Kind of the turning point in the last semester. Turn that over now for questions.
Yep, I think we can turn it over for questions. There's a question for you, Lynn, in the chat.
How do you grade the comparison between ChatGPT and their own? That was
Grade
the question.
I haven't been using that as a grade quite yet. It's been an open discussion leading towards a big paper at the end of the semester. So you can ask me at the end of May where that's going to go. So I had them write kind of with the scaffolding, a smaller part of an assignment. And then I wanted them to do a GPT generated one because they were getting stuck on some ideas. So we were kind of using it there. I haven't gone, it's just been, are you in class and participating, and did you come prepared? As of now, check mark. The end of this semester paper, I have my rubric that I've used every semester. So they're aware that if they put anything in there from the Chat GPT, it's not allowed to be included in their paper. And I have those because they turned it in. Doesn't mean they won't use other things, but I did let them know that what they generated there as a learning tool in class cannot be included in their paper, setting the expectation. Hope that answered the question.
You did, Lynn. Thank you. That was my
You're
question.
welcome.
Serena Crawford. Lynn, just one other quick question.
Yeah.
I always have my students upload on Turnitin. I think I've heard now that Turnitin will actually indicate if there's content that comes from ChatGPT. So this is this in addition to what I would normally have seen in a Turnitin report?
You'll get 2 scores, the originality score, that 99% plagiarized means 99% copied and pasted from the internet, and a separate AI score. So it can get a 0% on Turnitin for plagiarism. It's original, but then it can flag 100% AI wrote it.
Okay, great. And there was nothing else I had to do different because I just went in, I guess, yesterday and set up my assignment on Turnitin. So there were no additional functions that I had to indicate.
As long as your university college signed up to have that additional part, right, Amy? You would probably know that component with getting it rolled out. You're muted.
Yeah, but I think most universities have the part that's required. Yeah, I don't think you have to do anything different. We have it, and I had a faculty member over the weekend contact me because she had a student who it came up and turned it in that it was 15%. And I said to her the same thing that Beryl just posted in the chat, that the detectors can have false positives and false negatives, and suggested having a conversation. And again, I'm really happy to report that our students don't lie very well. And so when she confronted the student just straight up said, I used AI. So I said, well, like if the students can, confessing that they did it, it's a whole different ballgame, and and you can deal with that. I will also tell you that was a situation where, again, very similar to what Beryl said, it was a student that's not a native English speaker, and so they had used AI for the summary of their paper. And the professor was like, why would you use it for a summary? Like, that should be a summary of what you did. You didn't use it on, the rest of the paper. But the student said, I didn't know how to say what I wanted to say. And so what I suggested to the faculty member was exactly what Beryl and Lynn have said, to write it yourself, ask AI, to write it, and then compare those and, make changes as you need to make changes based on both of those and what they show you. So.
Beryl, you had added a comment in the chat with regard to some of the problems with detectors and false positives and negatives.
Yes, did you want me to elaborate or?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you
Yeah,
had.
I actually did, there was a New York Times article about the Turnitin tool and how they had students, try putting in different papers, some AI generated, some not, and they talked about cases where students did not use AI, and yet it said, 50% or 60% that it was AI generated. It's just really hard to tell because, like I showed you, the AI can choose different words randomly. So it's not like saying you took this text from online and copied it in. It was generated from random words. So it's very hard to be sure. There are OpenAI is thinking about adding some kind of marker where they, but they haven't yet, where they would be able to trace back whether it was generated by them. The problem is there's so many different AIs popping up everywhere that it is going to be a cat and mouse game. The detection is going to be very difficult. So I think it's probably better to avoid that and to try to, to grade the process, not the product. Make sure you see them working on things. Make sure you have all the, other media they present. They that your students and what they're working on, basically.
I wanted to add on to that as the one that signs the plagiarism and dishonesty letters. If a faculty member had sent me something just from ChatGPT detector, I do run it through or Turnitin to look to see if they're at least on the same page. I've had one incidence where the ChatGPT online was a much higher percentage and then our Turnitin was much lower. And I asked the faculty member, as I always do, did you talk to the student about it, see what they did, what they didn't do before any of us accuse them of dishonesty, and had the conversation. And the student said, I did write this, but then this part down here, I tried to fix. It was a similar situation where it was mostly written, it was written rather poorly. And then there was one part at the end that just sounded too good to be true. So it was really kind of, as Beryl said, it could be conflicting results. So that was a case where it was just a lesson conversation with the student about getting feedback on a paper more appropriately. Because we do want to err on the side that this isn't 100% detection tool. It's still in the works.
I want to throw in something here too, because I know we talked a lot about papers and written assignments and how ChatGPT can help pull those together, and students can potentially plagiarize there. We have to be careful, but it's also being used to write some scripts. And as Beryl showed a couple examples, you can get it to write some code or to give you some code. So it's always in most computer science classes that I've taught. Where students have to write large coding projects, I asked them to do a code walkthrough where they have to actually explain an abbreviated code walkthrough, not line by line, but explain the meaning of each section of code that they wrote, what the objectives were, what the optimizations they found were, and so on, and analyze the algorithms within the code mathematically, so I know that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And when you have those sorts of requirements, it gets around some of this level of plagiarism, at least in the computer science courses, maybe engineering courses, math courses where they might be using ChatGPT. I mean, many of us had to, we didn't just submit our dissertation, we had to actually defend it orally too. And it's like, I go back to that. It's like, we had to defend that. We had to, speak to that to show that we actually knew what we wrote in there. So,
Thanks. We have James, is it Giliello, included a comment on the chat. Anything you'd like to add to that? Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. Please correct me if I didn't.
Chris, everybody butchers my name. It's the Italian way of saying it is actually Giliello, but Americans pronounce it Gigliello. So either one is right, but I've been called Gigolo, Gilello, you name it, and I've been called, and I went to Catholic school and I had a lot of nuns and priests love to call me Gigolo. So I'm used to it. And Lord knows my students have called me a lot worse, I'm sure, behind my back. I've been dealing with the AI thing since months ago. And the textbook is specific. And when you're using a textbook as a foundation, if the information that they're writing in those papers have nothing from the textbook, that's a pretty good bet that they're using AI, because they're getting the terms right, but they're not getting the information and the different sections of the textbook which they should be reporting on, which they don't. So I know they're using AI. I called them out on it. I give them one chance to redo the paper and say, now you're going to read the chapter and you're going to report on the chapter in your words. And they will do it. They will admit to it, and the problem is solved. I send out letters to the entire class at the beginning of the semester telling them, I don't appreciate the use of AI. I want you to think, I want you to grow, and I want you to evolve, because in psychology, it's based on the study of the mind, and I want to know what your mind is saying based on what you're reading. So I've sort of dodged bullets here. So thank you very much for this meeting.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? You can just raise your hand and or just speak up.
Verena Crawford again. I quite frankly look at ChatGPT as a tool, and I teach marketing strategy. And it is a succinct way for us in marketing to be able to quickly understand the competitive landscape. And we then have to take that information and use our critical thinking and come up with our marketing strategy. So I clearly positioned very early on that this is another tool class that we will use to try and help us create the most compelling marketing strategies. The other point with respect to trying to ensure that students are using their critical thinking, in the past, when I had students work on a case, they would end up submitting a case analysis, writing a fairly lengthy narrative. I had to do away with that. We are now using that case in the classroom in a debating format. So I have a chance firsthand to see how much they know from having read the case that they can now articulate and debate amongst our peers. So again, I'm quite frankly very happy that this is another tool in our kit to try and help us be better marketeers, net.
Thanks very much. Curious if there's any others who are using ChatGPT or other tools for teaching in their classes. We have a comment here from Erica about tutoring capabilities of generative AI to meet students where they are. I don't know if Erica Hollis, if you want to add to that comment. Good. Okay.
Raise
Thanks.
their hand.
I don't, that was just my comment. I see someone has their hands up, so I don't want to take up more space. That's all my comment said.
Thanks, Erica. I'm looking for that hand raised right now, so the person can just speak right up.
Oh, it was my hand, Andre.
Hi,
But
Andre.
Erica, we've got all the space in the universe for you. So, but I just wanted to offer, and maybe Dr. Joseph, I won't venture into the surname there, can correct me if I'm mistaken, but a couple of things, I think it's already been raised that sometimes students sincerely, they just see this as another tool like Grammarly or like something to help them with their success. So depending, and everything's context specific. So myself with some assignments, okay to use AI when it's part of the process and kind of, there's certainly elements of thinking development that can happen with that. But in one case, what I wanted to share was an assignment where AI wasn't permitted, and I found a couple students had used it. And one student said, just in conversation said, the ideas are mine. I just used AI to improve the clarity and flow of my sentences. And I'm quoting, that's what the student wrote. And that led to, really talking with the student about the saying about writing is thinking. And that very function of improving the clarity and flow of your sentences is, at least as I understand it, that's a very important part of the thinking process. And when you take yourself through that, whatever's going on, I'm not a neuroscientist, but the neurobiological activity that's happening, particularly in the 18 to 25 age range, with the neocortex and things that are happening there, like seeing that using these tools could, it's worth the effort to build those grooves and get those synapses firing together, especially if an assignment is asking you to do that kind of work without the use of a tool. And at least in that, I've found that to be one way to talk with students about it that they are responsive to. So that's it.
Thanks, Andre. Actually, I have a comment from Warren Cook, a couple of comments just with regard to using ChatGPT. First, the version that's the paid version, and then also using ChatGPT in class in a comment that looks like it was actually generated using ChatGPT. Warren, do you have anything to add?
No. Well, okay, a little bit actually. So I have a general policy in my class that students can use it however they want, as long as they explain to me in their works cited page how they've chosen to use it. So I want them to include a paragraph, just explaining to me, okay, how did you use this? Where did you use it? What part of it can be attributed to the program? Most of the students who've chosen to use it, that I know about at least, use it primarily for copy editing, expanding out sections, and adding in things that would otherwise take too much time in the context of the assignment. So far, I'm seeing it as a pretty straightforward improvement to students' work. And I've seen some pretty interesting applications.
I wasn't aware of the difference in the feature set between ChatGPT and ChatGPT Plus. I've been under the impression that it's the same system, but with ChatGPT Plus, you get access during peak times, and you kind of get shortcut in there some of the new features. One thing to consider as well, that both systems, whether you're the Plus or the subscription or the free version, the training ended right around November 2021. For those systems. I'm not saying they're not going to refresh that training cycle and the supervised learning iterative process, but asking for more current information beyond 2021 could be a way to fool it. If you ask to write a paper on, what just happened with the cybersecurity leak in the US government, it would have very little on that because that just happened. So using more current events is one way to, I guess, tease out some of the AI.
Thanks, Ian.
Can I respond to Ian's point on the difference between versions real quick?
Of course.
Sure, go for it.
Yeah, so there is actually a difference between the free version that is available and what is available to subscribers. So subscribers currently have access to ChatGPT 4, whereas the free version has been termed ChatGPT version 3.5. There are some added features, including the ability to be able to process and understand image prompts, as well as more elaborate and somewhat more advanced text generation. I've tried out both versions myself. There do seem to be some meaningful differences. It's just not necessarily clear that based on looking at the OpenAI page alone, that's what's happening right now.
True. Yeah, I'm not doubting that there is some improvements. I just wasn't aware of those. I was looking at them side by side. But yeah, no, I see in 4 there are some additional tweaks for sure. And there's some examples of how they've been able to produce some slightly better responses.
May I ask a question? Those that have maybe spent more time on ChatGPT than myself, do you know whether there's a capability to do a side-by-side comparison or a head-to-head comparison between rivals? You know, for example, would a ChatGPT be able to take a Michael Porter's 5 Forces and say, these are some of the threats that are more apparent in an Apple product than a Samsung product?
I've played with AI a little bit, and I think that's an interesting question. If you're really good at using it, yes, that's the thing. Like a lot of this stuff requires really specific direction, and it can do a lot, but it needs to be directed in the right way. So that isn't to say, though, that students couldn't get really good at using it, right? So you could still get something that looks like unique thought. Unfortunately, which unfortunately for, people concerned about, students using it in the inappropriate ways. I think if it's well directed, it could really be capable of that sort of like complicated, like contrasting things.
All right,
It appears that most students appear to be using it where if you ask them a basic content question, describe the differences between topic A and topic B, they copy and paste your question into AI. So not saying students can't do it on a much more complicated level, but the more common use in students, not just the few that I've seen, but reading through some of the higher ed information, appears to be more just generating content to answer a content question.
all right. Thank you, ladies.
So as we approach the hour, I just wondered if we had any concluding comments or thoughts from any of our 4 panelists.
I wanted to say that I do believe that AI is going to change education because I think these AI tools are going to be used in the workplace, and it's going to be in Microsoft Office and everything else. So I think in a way we will do our students a disservice if we don't let them use it in college. I think they need to get used to using them wisely and in ways that help them to do things productively. So I think the way we teach probably will need to change as these AI tools get incorporated in things like word processors. And I think all of us, gave some great tips for doing that, where you work with your students in the classroom and you let them explore these tools rather than banning them outright.
Well, thank you again to each of our panelists this afternoon. Thank you, Martha, for your work in terms of coordinating this series, this being the last of the workshops that are part of the series. Thanks to Lita Carbone and the College of St. Rose for your ongoing technical support throughout the course of the series. We're delighted to have you join us this afternoon. Please feel free to share with your colleagues that the recording of this will be available for anybody interested in viewing it. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great evening.